He's got bravado going.
But that's right.
That's right. He don't need no vibrato when you got all the bravado he's got. That's right.
We call it gravitas in the industry.
Absolutely. No vibrato when you got all the bravado he's got.
Hey! Happy Friday, everybody.
There we are.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We have Walt Teeter with us.
Happy Friday,
George
everybody.
Wentz. The whole crew's here today.
Good morning.
We have awesome.
Well, we're excited to be here. I was hearing a little echo, and I was going, I wonder what's going on there.
I don't know. Well, our producer, it's Friday.
Well, you know.
Our
I think he
producer's
was
having
up late last night.
I think he was.
Yeah, probably
was.
up late last night.
Yeah. It's okay.
He was testing.
He's
Absolutely.
Well,
So are we good? Are we ready to go?
Yeah, go ahead and kick things off, and we'll.
cool. Well, I'll go ahead and start.
the wonders of a live YouTube show.
There you go. Absolutely.
It's good. It's good stuff.
Ah.
So today, there's a couple of different topics I wanted to bring up. One of them is in the news the other day, we heard about Binance and their power outage, right? So this caused a lot of crypto traders to lose millions, right? So that's going to be one of our topics. After that, I want to talk about just some, real talk with the MAD directors. And we all know that each of the directors, they have their own specialty and they have their strengths that they bring to the table, right? For MAD that really strengthens our company, let's put it that way. And so they're all gonna have their own journey throughout this process. And I would love to hear from each of you what your journey has been like with Make a Difference thus far. So, but let's circle back really quick.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm glad you gave me a heads up on that one.
Yeah. You're welcome. Let's circle back really quick to Binance and their situation they just went through with their power outage. What would be a solution that MAD would bring to the table for something like that?
I think we should ask Walt.
Well, I think we should just have Walt answer all the questions today. He's well rested and he's there, in his secret undisclosed location.
Right.
Take it away, Walt Teeter.
Well, certainly. Well, I think actually there's several different pieces that interact here. So one is power and energy security, and so we've been working with data centers on looking at green yet reliable solutions. And so that involves what we call hybrid systems, where we combine some traditional renewables with some energy storage and some backup. And by that, the net impact is to reduce substantially the carbon footprint and the general pollution footprint of the power block side. But at the same time, crucially, providing that reliability that's required by data centers, by processing, by obviously an exchange is really it's a very complex and transactional and data processing facilities, as well as the security of those data centers. And one of the things we also read about very, very frequently is just how many of these get hacked, and that's an enormous problem for the operators. But obviously, it's not only time consuming, but quite problematic for the victims of those hacks as well. So in working with secure pre-grid power, so this means the power is provided to those consumers, the data centers in this case, prior to the grid connection. So you're isolated from the grid, you can run independently, and at the same time support the grid and pull power off of the grid during times, for example, when there's excess generation. And so we really are focused on these solutions for the data center and information technology and information transfer side of the industry. And as we always talk about, that part of the world in the industry is just getting bigger. So, as more and more cell phones are added, more and more content, and most of that content seems to be saved forever somewhere on the internet, that exponential growth in data center requirements and data handling are really sort of part of the ballgame now.
Yeah, so had Binance been using one of these data centers or had been using the consistent power supply that we're providing there, then this outage wouldn't have happened. And the people that lost really a lot of money during that period of time. Just to back up and describe what happened, if people aren't up on it, they actually went down. Binance went down at the exact time that Bitcoin was dropping dramatically, and so you're stuck. You cannot sell. If you were on that exchange, you're watching the value of Bitcoin descend dramatically. You would like to sell, and you're unable to do so. So you're locked into the loss. And as I understand it, there's actually a lawsuit that's being filed public. I read an article about it yesterday against Binance on this issue. So I think it's going to be a big deal. And I think, it does emphasize the consistency of electrical supply that is necessary to run these programs and make them work. And that's really what we're providing to the data centers that we're contracting with. So
right, but we're working on the next gen data center, which is even much more efficient and takes less energy, less water.
Yeah, that's why we're doing. That's why we're there, is because it is, it's the answer to the dirty nature of data centers. They're really they take a tremendous amount of power, and they take a tremendous amount of cooling. And that's the issue with them. And, people look at it and say, is this a sustainable model? Well, perhaps where we have been is not sustainable, but the data centers that we are working on, with a partner is they are sustainable, and they're actually better than anything out there at this point in time, and more secure. So if you were to have a wallet, let's say, in these data centers, then they're going to be more secure than anywhere else you could ever house that. So those are the advantages.
And I think it's somewhat amplified. So when you look at having a green solution, you look at placing your data center where you have more renewable energy. So for example, in a desert, so you get good sunlight, your solar cells work well, but then you don't have the water for the coolings. And so by using systems that are more efficient, consume less water, consume less power, you're solving two problems at the same time.
I'd just like to say one little quick word about Binance. The White & Case was hired to pursue this suit against Binance, and they started looking for, well, where is Binance and how do we sue them? And it turns out that CZ, who set up Binance, Chinese and apparently lives in Taiwan, but they essentially are a stateless company. They have no headquarters. They're very difficult to get a hold of. And they have actually said that they don't have a headquarters. And it's interesting, if you go into the websites for the Binance and the Binance-owned companies, it's very difficult to find out who they are, who owns them, who manages them. One of the reasons that we come on every Friday and talk is because we want you to know who's behind this. We want you to know who we are. Our
Absolutely.
reputation is on the line. We have been in this industry for a long, long time, and we are here. You see our faces, you hear us speak, and we do that so that you know exactly who's behind this program. And, we are putting our personal reputations and years of experience behind what we're doing here, unlike a company like Binance, where you have no idea who's doing what. So we think it's important that you know who we are.
Absolutely. Like you said, a big part of why we want to be out here every Friday and speaking to our audience directly, answering questions live. I think it's a big part of it.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
It's how you gain your trust, right?
Yeah, it's that trust issue. It's the veracity of what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So can one of you gentlemen put a little more color on something we went through quick, but I think it's a really big deal, and it probably could, you can expand on it so people understand why it's the case. But we say that it takes less energy to run and cool these things. But why is that?
It's because the cooling system is different than the normal. It's an advance in the cooling system itself. If you put a data center with all the CPUs operating and all, they're air cooled. Then you have fans. The exhaust goes directly into the atmosphere of the building, and then the building has to not only cool all that, you're cooling the entire square footage of the building, and you're exhausting that out. You're creating a tremendous amount of heat being exhausted in the atmosphere. But running those things takes two things that you don't really want to use, especially where a lot of these data centers are, and that's water and electricity. So if you can come up with a way, which our partner has done, the data centers that we're providing the green energy for, of cooling it in a different fashion that doesn't require air cooling and air conditioning the entire building, which they have figured out how to do, then you knock out that entire use of water as well as the use of electricity to air cool the running air conditioning, massive chillers to keep the whole thing at 68 degrees, right?
Yeah.
We're just keeping the actual containers that have the CPUs in them at low temperatures,
right? So that's why this is the next generation.
Yeah, they figured out how to do this. It's a huge advance, and that's why it makes these so much more efficient. Is really, I mean, a CPU is a CPU. It's gonna take a certain amount of energy to run it, and so we talk to people and they go, well, it can't be any more efficient because CPUs are as efficient as it gets. And we go, well, that could be true, but if you came up with a way to keep those CPUs cool that didn't require air conditioning thousands and thousands of square feet, then that would be an advance. And that's really where the advance is. It's roughly 40% savings. 40% savings. I've been really good at math, and like 40% is almost like half to me. You know what I'm saying?
And
it's like, wow, that's a lot,
This is where we talk often how Make a Difference is an all the above company, because we don't have, like we've mentioned before, just see one piece of a project or a technology. We see the whole thing, right? The before and the after effects, as well as the actual project and technology itself.
We are a soup to nuts approach. Absolutely.
Soup to nuts, is it?
Soup to nuts,
Well, wait a second. Who's the nuts part of this organization? That's what I want to know.
I think the audience can tell.
Well, if we've covered everything that we have to say about the situation at Binance, it might be a good time to kind of dive into our, raw dialogue, our real talk, and get into you guys a little bit more and your experience here at MAD and how your journey's been.
I think George should kick it off, because quite logically, I mean, he was the visionary that came up with this. He's the one that reached out to Walt and I. So, George, why don't you start?
Well, I can tell you it's been a really cool thing, because what we've been able to do is pull together a team of people, not only, great engineers, great analysts, great financial analysts, a team of lawyers, you, me, and Walt, and all of that team is what I really love about this, because it's the people, I'll just never forget the day that you and Donnie came to lunch, and we were sitting around the table, and I went, we need you guys, And
it was a life-changing moment for us too.
Yeah, it was a life-changing moment for all of us, because, and then all of a sudden, everything happened correctly. Disney had the Corona thing, and you were able to come here, and it's all worked out. I just love the way that it's all worked. Mm-hmm. So, we set the mission, we set the goal, we made the battle plan, we baked the team, and we have pursued it. And it's been, it's like anything when you're starting something new and it hasn't been done before. You occasionally stub your toe, and we make a list of every time we stub our toe, and we go, okay, let's not do that one again, But but it's been, a lot of what we're doing has not been done, because we're merging technology with new laws. We're issuing a tokenized security, only the second company to ever do that. So our approach has been, we're reaching directly to the people rather than going to Wall Street. Most people would go to Wall Street, or most people would go to big financial institutions, and we're allowing the entire community to get involved and be the answer to this huge problem. So that approach, and developing that approach, and then making sure that every component of that approach is correctly done. It's been just around 2 years now, huh?
Almost.
Yeah. I mean, we're coming up on it. We're coming up on our second year of, of all working together on this thing.
Yeah.
Originally Walt and Steve and me, but we brought in a huge team. So that journey for me, if there's one word that I would describe it, it's been joyful. It's been a joyful and fulfilling experience. And I feel like we're on a track to do very well for the environment and very well for the people involved.
Absolutely.
So that's really what I like about it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Sure.
that's my feeling on it.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for Walt, everything would be perfect. I mean, I'm just saying, there's always that sour note, but I mean, hey, we love him anyway. We love you, Walt, despite all your flaws and, yeah, now he's the youngster, you can tell you got to have one young guy, So,
Right.
Well, what has your journey been like for you?
So I think really one of the keys for me was that Matt affords the opportunity to implement real world solutions quickly while at the same time enabling more far reaching and impactful solutions. And I know I've used the example before, but if you look at the atmosphere as a bathtub, it's how fast you put it in and how fast you take it out on the water side or the CO2 side. And so our ability to go in these examples we've given and immediately effectuate changes 30, 40, 50, 60, 70% reductions in the net emissions means that by those early solutions, we've bought a lot of time while we fully develop and implement more far-reaching solutions. And so that opportunity to combine what I think of as turning the wrenches on an immediate solution, while at the same time not excluding the perfect solution, but not waiting for it. So in other words, making that difference now across the board. And so I think that's been really one of the most satisfying opportunities for me, is the ability to be impactful immediately.
I love that.
Cool.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
no
Wow.
no one asked you yet.
No one has.
Yeah.
I was.
No one asked you yet.
I'm patient.
Okay.
I'm just waiting.
Mr. Youngdahl.
Oh, well, thank you.
Oh, see, she has.
So, George and I have worked together in the past, just as George and Walt have worked together in the past, and we've done different businesses and ventures together, and as is kind of usually the case, George wakes up one day and he has a vision, and all of a sudden he wants to share it, and so he rings me up and he kind of lays this out, and I went, well, that's kind of interesting. So we're going to actually go save the planet. All right, that sounds pretty interesting. And then he said, and we're going to do it with a free market approach. Well, that's where he had me right there on the free market, because I'm a free market guy. And so, we started looking into some of the details of how we could do this. And we figured out quickly that we can get the job done and be profitable, and people get to be part of the solution, because we can go direct to the people part of the solution, and they get to make good returns. So to me, it was the best of both worlds. Sometimes the money side of it is just kind of a way to keep score, so to speak, right? Once you get so much money, it's just kind of it's an index that kind of keeps score on how things are going. Well, the technologies that we're working on right now that we'll be releasing over time are going to absolutely change the way the planet views power, communications, transportation, and at the end of the day, what legacy are you going to leave behind? I'm holding out hope that someday I might have grandkids. I don't know.
Patience.
Assuming that comes true, someday the grandkids are sitting around and they go, hey, they're not going to say, Grandpa died with a lot of money. That'd be nice. Maybe they get a few shekels out of the deal. So, but really, it's going to the real bragging rights are, my grandpa helped save the planet, and I think that's a much better legacy to leave behind than the other. I mean, the other's nice; everyone loves that, but I mean, that meaningful, something that lives on is completely transforming the way that society views energy and transportation and communications. I think that's so cool to me. It takes all of the training I've done, all the experiences I've had over my lifetime, and it gives it some absolute focus to where, we just look forward to coming in every day. I mean,
that is true.
Yeah.
But don't you think it's
Everybody
more
here does.
likely that they would say Uncle Walt saved the planet?
They
I mean,
might.
I'm just thinking.
They might.
I mean, really?
Chance.
You know what I'm saying?
Well,
Probably.
it could happen.
All right. I would just like to say one thing about Steve. Steve and I have done other things in the past, and what I love about him and why he was like, okay, I gotta get a hold of Steve, is it doesn't matter what you come to Steve with. He's like, okay, and his mind starts whirling, and he's like, how am I going to make this happen? And he's an organizer, and he's the guy that makes everything come together, and actually puts it all together. It's fantastic to watch him. I could come to him and say, all right, Steve, we're going to Mars. And he would go, what's my budget and when are we landing? Right? I just go, what's my budget and when are we landing?
Yeah.
It's like, he wouldn't say, you're kidding, we're going to Mars? We can't go to Mars. I've never heard him say anything like that. It's always, okay, and then he's immediately on the mission. So it's been great, man. It's been a good time.
Oh,
I
it's
really
a blast.
enjoyed it.
We're really having a good time.
Yeah.
And that's important.
You never know it.
And I think, and I think that is a mentality that all of us here really have, and that's how we function as a whole.
Yep.
We don't ever feel or think, oh, we're in over our heads, or we're overwhelmed, or we're
not smart enough
problem
to know
solvers.
that we are, right? We don't know that. If we were smart, we would know that.
But
Anyway,
I think that
was
of
a
your
joke, guys.
all of your past experience and everything that you've worked up until this time, I mean, it's just nothing feels impossible. You know what I mean?
That's
And we
true.
don't have that mentality. It's like you said, we're going to Mars. All right, great. When do we leave? What's the budget?
Absolutely.
And that's how do we make it happen? And
That's
we just figure it out.
Yep.
I feel like one of the things that's said in the office often, if someone doesn't know how to do something, it's like, well, I'll figure it out. And we do. We don't sit there and tell ourselves, oh, well, I can't do that because I've never done it before. Well, you'll never know if you don't jump in and do it now.
See, the beauty about not being an engineer is my mind's not encumbered with that would be impossible.
Mm-hmm.
George and I will think of something. We said that sounds great, and then we give it to Walt, and Walt says, "Really? Are you guys just serious?" And we would say, "Yeah, come on, Walt. We know you can figure out how to make this thing work," and he does.
Yeah.
He does.
Yep,
But
that's true.
it's an interesting process when something new comes across the transom, because it always does. George and Walt have been in the energy space, collectively for like a million years, and so with the reputation that they have, things that it's like, oh, we need to get this to these guys and see what they think, and then we immediately go into this due diligence process to figure out, if this dog can really hunt. And if it looks like one that we can take to the finish line and commercialize it, goes on the list. So
Absolutely.
it's pretty cool to go through that process, and all of a sudden, and you're looking at this going, wow, in the aggregate, all these things we have, they're transformative. This is going to change
Everything.
Yeah.
And we've made a
everything.
vision tangible.
Yeah. We decided to just change everything.
Yeah.
Right.
Small goal, right?
Yeah, we didn't want to go small, let's go big or go home,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Looks like we have
Absolutely.
a question
Oh.
from Matt, and I failed to remember my glasses today, so I'm going to give this a go.
Yeah.
How has the passage of the new infrastructure bill played into Matt's approach, if any?
I'm going to give that to our resident lawyer here.
Yeah. Well, we always feel that anytime you're taking money from the government, you are making a deal with the devil, and you are doing a dance with the devil. You never know how it's going to come out. You're going to see as you get subsidized windmills, and then you get an overabundance of windmills, right? That's a malappropriation of funds. It's an incentive that the market didn't demand. It is therefore the use of resources towards a problem or a solution to a problem that the market did not feel that it could support. So therefore, you have this intervention which messes up the incentive structure, and you honestly end up building things that are in the long run not going to work. And so every time we see this, I'm always going, my goodness gracious, I wonder what all that copper could have been used for. I wonder what all the things that went into those windmills could have really been used for to make an efficient baseload type of power that would really reduce the cost of a kilowatt hour, make companies more profitable, and in the end of the day, save lives in a crisis. So probably, I mean, our approach has always been free market. We're going to go in a free market way. There may be some tax implications of the infrastructure bill. Certainly we'll look at that. There are some tax implications for cryptocurrencies that looks as if they're built in there. There's giant subsidies, and if certain types of subsidies perhaps we would consider, we're not going to do anything that is, in other words, if they're just dumping free money on something that we already want to do, we're not going to turn it down, because by taking that money, we're going to return more to our partners, you people that we're talking to. So we're going to look at all of that. But generally, we are not inclined to be on the government dole. That's just not how we think. We think, let's go out, solve the problem, come up with a market-based solution, come up with a solution that uses resources efficiently, time efficiently, uses the investment of money efficiently, therefore creates a return by solving a problem that needs to be solved. The government doesn't think that way, unfortunately. So we may fit into some programs, but we will always be careful about those.
And if I might sort of amplify a bit there, obviously the infrastructure bill is one way in which legislation is influencing the markets in general, the energy markets, the CO2 markets. But there's really a much broader influence than that on the state level, on the international level, on the US federal level, whereby the regulatory regime, legislation, tax incentives, cap and trade, it's all sort of moving in the same general direction, which is toward the energy transition. And that takes on several forms. So for example, an earlier example whereby there's an immediate savings in emissions, well, that creates a tangible benefit in the regulatory regime. So whether it's under the low carbon fuel standard in California, or the 45Q credits on the federal side, or right now you're seeing legislation very similar to California that's really going through the process in Illinois. And so what we are seeing is the reality of the situation is the global governments have really set their focus, and I think even more so sort of post quarantine, on the energy transition. And so obviously MAD being on the forefront of that and positioned to take advantage of those rules and regulations and laws is really advantageous to the limited partners. That's what our focus is.
Yeah, and I mean, just because I'm saying that we're going to be very careful about any sort of money that we take from in forms of subsidies. I mean, subsidies always have strings attached, but in general, this infrastructure bill pushing us towards the energy transition is very helpful to MAD, because we are the tip of the spear on that in many ways. We were out in front of this a bit, and so this, being on that wave is very helpful. It also raises, I think, the profile of the issue, because now we're pouring trillions of dollars into attempting to solve some of these energy issues that Matt has already been addressing. So that's all good. That's all positive for us. What we don't want to do is we don't want to bring our limited partners into a subsidy dependent market, because those subsidies are here today and they're gone tomorrow. And we don't want to be dependent on those. We want to be dependent upon actually meeting a market need and making money doing it and giving a long-term return to our investors. That's our focus.
I think there's also, it's history would indicate that there's generally unintended consequences when they roll out major legislation like this. And you kind of touched on one. I was wondering maybe Walt could put a little more color on it. But anytime that you advance one segment of the industry, but it's intermittent power instead of baseload power, it's a little disruptive. What do you think, Walt?
No, I think it sure is, Steve. And like the example I gave a bit earlier, which was, it makes a lot of sense if one wants to look at solar to focus those facilities, putting those data center facilities in high desert, right? You get a lot of solar irradiance. You have few cloudy days. It's not as much between you and the sun, but then you get a lot of challenges. Well, if you're in a desert, you get dust. So dust gets on your solar panels and needs to be removed. You still got to cool the equipment. So you've got the issues of how do you cool it effectively? And so therefore, in that position where we're starting out 40% more efficient, it means we need to produce 40% less power. And if we're 98% reduction on water consumption, well, that speaks for itself. If you're living in a desert, the last thing you want to waste is water, right? That's just not very smart. And then, on top of that, so that's what I consider an immediate real world solution. But yet Matt is also then investing in longer term solution, which is improving the efficiency of the data management itself. And so the golden cipher is a great example of that. If we can dramatically improve the efficiency of data storage and transfer securely, and that 40% head start on reduction goes to 50 or 60 or 70% reduction. Well, that's bought us another decade or more. And so therefore, looking at just compounding the benefits of the activity. So you kind of look at it, things can compound in a good way or in a bad way. And we want to make sure we're compounding this in a good way.
Absolutely. Do we have any more questions? Another one from Matt. I might need assistance with this. 10 billion for a climate core, 20 billion to advance racial equity and environmental justice. Do you anticipate getting involved in government projects or are outsiders? Did I read all that correctly?
Well,
You read it correctly. I'm not sure I understand it all the way, but
well, are we outsiders? I think is the question. We are in business to make money for our limited partners. That's our job, and to invest wisely and to get the maximum return that we can, within all of the parameters that we have set. It's got to be advancing the clean environment. It has to be pushing towards carbon free. It has to be doing all those things. But at the same time, it has to make a return. Mm-hmm. So if there are billions of dollars, available in the infrastructure bill that fit into all those parameters that don't require us to invest in a something that we believe has no long-term future and will not be a good investment for our limited partners, then if we can take advantage of those things, we will. So we're not outsiders. We are simply intelligent people that are going to do the best possible thing to solve the problem and make money doing it. If the government wants to help us do that, then that's just fine. And if they want to help us in a way that doesn't hinder us, which we have yet to see, but if they ever did that, then we would be very pleased about that. We would love to work with the Department of Energy on some of these projects, and maybe there's a way that we can. We're not going to not look at that. We always look at that. I mean, I was in DC many times in the past 2 years, and I have sat with people at the Department of Energy, and there are some good folks there, So maybe there's something that can happen. But generally, I guess the answer is we're not going to ignore it, so we're not outsiders. But our business model does not depend upon people raining money on us, right? Why should we take money from the people, put it to the government, and then put it back to MAD, right? That doesn't make any sense at all. What we're doing is we're going directly to the people, and we're allowing the people to solve the problem themselves. And that's the difference between us and everyone else. We're placing it in the hands of the population already. The taxpayers are the people that are giving us money directly. They're just not giving it to the government first,
Yeah.
And then we are wisely investing it for a return, and that's how we work. Now, if the government wants to, the government has nothing, right? The government just takes money from the people and then doles it out to special people who get it, who are there. And I find that I find that model offensive, in that really we should just allow the system to work, right? Why do you take it from the people, take it to DC, cut off about 10% or 20% or whatever it is, and then dole it out? That's a very inefficient way to make things happen. If there's a need for these solutions, the people are smart. They'll see what we're doing, they'll get on board, and then we can bypass that government circuit. So we're not anti, but that's not our focus.
Yeah,
we keep an eye on it. We keep an eye on it. We know exactly what they're doing.
Right.
And if something fit, then we would take advantage of it.
I agree. I would note that I think that some of the most effective public investment is public infrastructure investment, right? If you think about the original system of highways and canals, et cetera, that, there are certain levels of fiber optics of public money that has boosted the real economy and standard of living for the world, essentially. But so I think while in general the comments are right that subsidies, they always tend to distort markets. They're intended to distort markets. But at the same time, there are infrastructure projects that in the past have proven effective in boosting overall economic well-being.
Yeah, and if more of the budget of the infrastructure bill was on infrastructure, that would be just perfect. You know what I'm saying? I mean, there's a lot of bridges that need attention, right? That haven't been upgraded over the years and probably haven't been properly maintained. And so that kind of thing, and widening avenues of commerce, such as broadband, such as all of those types of things. That's a great role for the government to play. And I think, though, that a minor portion, less than half of the infrastructure bill, is actually being spent on those types of issues. So that's where I have a little problem with what I see going on. Not only that, but I do see a problem with just dumping trillions and trillions of dollars, into these things. When I was in the Reagan administration, we actually had this word. It was called million. And it started with an M. And then at times we would get really concerned because we would hear the B word, billion. And we go, oh, that's a lot of money. We have to be really, really super careful with those billions there, And, I think Reagan said, a million here, a million there. And before you know it, it adds up. It's real money. And, now we're into the T word. We're in trillions. We're just, I have a concern about that. I mean, I just don't know, look, I'm old. I got 11 grandkids though. And so, I mean, they're going to be paying.
Okay, rub it in.
A competition.
Rub it in. That's okay. That's all right.
But they're going to be paying this back one day. I mean, somehow you got to get this back, right? So, I mean, all of my grandkids will be paying it back before your grandkids because they'll be ahead of you in their earning and
You're
the taxation.
Yeah, okay.
So,
Right.
we're going to be
okay.
They're going to be your debt's going to be less.
You're giving me the silver lining, is what you're saying.
Absolutely, my kids are going first.
All right.
But anyway, it is a problem, and I do think it's something that we have to address and get some control on. Monetary responsibility, fiscal responsibility. But But anyway, that's why we tend to be private enterprise people, because we believe that the highest and best use of funds is towards projects that make a return. And the reason they make a return is because people need them, and they will therefore pay for them. And so you have a need to fulfill there.
Yeah.
It's not a government created need. It's not a politically created need. It's people really need this.
Absolutely.
And if you look at the world, people, the one thing they need, the one thing that makes the biggest difference is reliable, affordable energy. You want to transform Africa? Let's get reliable, affordable energy there.
Baseload.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the only thing we really look at. You want to look down at Central America, where we've spent a lot of time, Central and South America. What they need is reliable, affordable, baseload energy.
Mm-hmm.
It transforms the economy when you provide it. That's
Absolutely.
what we're focused on. And we're focused on doing that in a way that is clean and green.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
And actually carbon free at the end of the day.
All three of you have extremely impressive resumes and backgrounds in your expertise. Can you maybe share something specific from your background that you feel like has really helped you with make a difference and our drive here and our success with what we've been developing? Well, would you like to start?
Exactly. I saw those guys jumping at that. So one of the projects that a few years ago was we worked with the U.S. Trade and Development Agency to design an energy plan for the city of Cape Town in South Africa. At the time, the city was under a severe drought. So again, water once again being kind of an important attribute. And it was also due to the age and maintenance and state capture and the rest, the power generation fleet and distribution and transmission fleet for the whole country was rickety. And so one of the things that's not clearly recognized by a lot of people who are spoiled by reliable power is just how economically damaging it is to not have power. So business can't, ATM machine's not going to work. You can't clear a credit card at the restaurant. Gas pumps don't work. And so the multiplier effect of what's called cost of unserved energy is enormous. We saw last winter in Texas, there were a lot of problems with lack of power. California, pretty regularly. I saw today 51,000 customers in Northern California without electricity on a rotating basis. And so part of it really is, for me, that real world experience on power going out. Right. Well, you don't want to be in an elevator at the time, for example. So it actually probably gets you in shape. You're taking stairs more. But those issues on reliability matter, and other things that are kind of hidden cost. So when the power is not reliable and it's fluctuating up and down, it's going to wear out your computer and your refrigerator and all your electronic devices. It materially shortens the lifespan. That's a big issue. It means you're going out and instead of buying a new washing machine every 15 years, maybe you're buying it every 5 or 6, and that really impacts people's personal well-being and finances. Yeah, so absolutely. I think it really helped me focus on, when we provide these solutions need to not do harm. In other words, not make the systems less reliable, and with a huge focus on making the systems more reliable and more efficient. And that sets the foundation for public acceptance. I think you're going to see a lot of pushback if things keep getting tougher and tougher, for example, in California or Texas or anywhere, and people start to lose faith in the energy transition and the ability to do so without endangering well-being and livelihoods and life.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right, Walt. I mean, real world experience, I've had some government experience. I've seen how that works. I've had real world experience. I've seen how that works. I've had small business experience, and I've had massive corporate experience. And so I've looked at all those different things. And in the course of that, I've also been all over the world. Africa, China, Asia, throughout Southeast Asia, Latin America, representing companies that stand up and provide power. And so when you see it from the first hand, the main impression that I got from all that experience was, my goodness, are we lucky to live in America, number one, because having lived, viewed all those other countries, Venezuela, I was there and it's falling apart. I was in Colombia before it got better, and then Venezuela went down. I mean, we've seen all these various countries go through these phases. And a lot of it has to do with basing things on energy and energy production, which we've been at the core of. I've had something to do with that for 40 years. So the thing that I focus on coming out of all that experience that impacted me the most was that I didn't like what I was seeing. I didn't like the way it was being done. I didn't like the way it was being handled. I thought it could be done better, cleaner. I thought it could create less pollution, and I thought we could do it more effectively and cheaper. And that's really the focus. I had coal. I've actually been at coal mines, mining coal, seeing how that works, right? Mm-hmm. And of course, coal, for years was the mainstay of the production of electricity. But unfortunately, boy, does it tear up the earth, and boy, does it create a whole lot of pollution. And I
was going to say, George, I have some news for our listeners. It's still the core of power production. So in other words, in the US and Europe, it's on its way out, but we are irrelevant compared to Asia as far as economic growth and growth in generation. And it's overwhelmingly coal-fired in Asia.
Yeah, that's a fact. I mean, in China, when I was there for months on end negotiating a big contract, and during that period of time, they were standing up a new coal-fired power plant every single week.
Gosh.
Yeah, and they still are too. I mean, their projection is for more and more use of coal. So One of the things that we want to do, and I think it's incumbent upon us to do, is to create the technologies that can replace that. But it's got to be replaced efficiently and effectively. Right. There are 1.4 billion people in China, right? They all want power. The power consumption of China and the Chinese regime, the Communist Party, is very worried about making sure that the citizens of China are under control and don't revolt against them. And one of the ways that they need to do that is provide them opportunity, and opportunity depends upon power. So if their question is, do we get overthrown by people that rise up against us, or do we use coal? They have decided that their answer is they're going to use coal. If we have technologies that we believe could replace that efficiently and effectively and allow them to transition. That's a huge piece of the puzzle. But I've been there, I've lived it, and I've seen it. And so that's why my focus, my point of view is different from a lot of people, because I've seen all these things. MAD's designed to fix all those problems,
Right, in a transitional way.
Yeah. And that's what we're focused on. You just touched on something, George, that I think is really, well, both you and Walt, and that is, the U.S. has made great strides in cleaning up the power industry. I mean, if you were to look at a map of the world and then color code it for who was doing really well and who was not, I mean, we're pretty darn green here, but we're not the ones at this point in time that are actually really pumping out all the bad stuff. You've got countries that understand that cheap baseload power is critical to their economic success, and they're not willing to eliminate that. In other words, they'll keep pumping out dirt and CO2 if it means that it's going to keep their economic engine revving. What that means to me is, like, there's not going to be any government regulation in those countries that says we're transitioning out. No, that's government regulation is what I call the push. We're going to force you to do something. Not going to happen there. The only way to get them to come along is with pulling. In other words, we've got a free market solution that is going to give you your inexpensive baseload power, but it's going to be extremely clean. And that way you're incentivized to leave the dirty. They'd probably just soon really not have the dirty stuff. They're just not going to give it up because it means their economic livelihood is put in jeopardy.
I mean, the people demand it. The people demand the power. The people demand the computers. They demand the lights. They demand the coffee pots going off at 4:15. They demand all that stuff.
In the
right?
industry.
And it's a lot of people,
right, and
meaning
jobs.
a lot of power.
So everything, without the power, none of that works. And so they're not going to walk away from that. Especially a command and control economy like China, they're just simply not going to walk away from that. So the idea is that it doesn't matter to them whether it's free market or not. They don't have a free market economy. So they're a command and control economy. But if there is a more effective technology that they can deploy within their system and make it work, they would, as opposed to continuing to pollute, and having Beijing, they had the Olympics there and they had to turn off all kinds of coal-fired power plants to try to make it look like the air wasn't as bad as it was. But there was many a morning when I was there where I couldn't see the hotel across the street from me. It was pretty bad. So all of these types of things, I mean, I think if they could figure out a way to do it, they would. What we're doing is we're figuring out the way to do it.
Correct.
And then we will allow them to do it. I mean, we will, we want to facilitate that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But the my point in all of that is that's the pull, not the push.
You're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you got it right.
And I think that's going to be the ultimate solution because we have to look at the entire planet, not just look what's going on in the United States.
Right.
Yep.
We have to look at what's going on everywhere.
We're seeing the full picture, not just a piece of
That
it.
is a global issue because the atmosphere is global. And, it doesn't. The atmosphere just simply does not recognize borders.
No.
You know, we painted those on the map. So.
Absolutely. Steve, did you have something that you wanted to share specifically from your background that has carried through and that something that you refer to often for your work that you do in MAD?
I don't know. Is there?
I mean, you're really in charge of the whole management of the team.
I have a varied background. I've started many businesses, some in the finance area, some in just simply marketing and sales, and the sum total of all of those experiences just happened to be the
right combination that you needed.
The right guy to come in and fill the need.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting. We got three different guys with three different backgrounds and three different areas of expertise that the sum total of which makes just a really good core team that we cover all the bases.
I say between the three of us, we managed to get one brain together.
I think so.
It actually works. That's very good. Yeah.
Did we have any other questions from anyone? Is that another one from Matt?
Most of today's U.S. grid was built in the 1950s and 1960s with a projected 50-year life expectancy. Does MAD plan to get involved with that side of the equation or just to the supply side?
Well, that addresses transmission. And I would just like to say that some things that were built in the 50s last longer than 50 years. I'm just saying.
Some things age well.
Yeah.
Just
Absolutely. Rode hard and put away wet. But anyway, the transmission issue that's a really good point because we do have a very vulnerable grid. It would be extraordinarily expensive to go through and upgrade that grid, that mechanical grid, throughout the United States. At some point, the way that we transmit electricity is going to have to be addressed. We have we are working with a company that does have a way of transmitting electricity wirelessly. I know we're all excited about this. It's not actually here right now, but it will. My belief is that we will be able to roll this out over the course of the next decade. And that is an electromagnetic grid. And there's a lot of work to be done yet, but it is certainly the most interesting invention that I've seen in a long time. It's taking what Tesla was working on so famously and actually bringing it to fruition. And we have a great relationship with the group that is doing that. We believe that we will be able to be a part of that. We have all kinds of ways that we would like to deploy that. The cool thing about this is that it's hurricane proof. It's electromagnetic pulse proof, EMP, doesn't impact it. So imagine, I lived through Katrina. Just imagine if when all the wires went down and there was no electricity, if we would have had this, then none of the lack of electricity, none of the problems that were created by lack of electricity, was pretty much the whole thing there, would have happened because it was coming in wirelessly. So when Walt was huddled away for 3 days after Maria in Puerto Rico, and we didn't know if he was alive or dead, then this would have solved that problem. So there are ways. I'm not sure that we'll have to replace the mechanical grid mechanically. I think that we may replace it with a leap in technology through the use of the fulfillment of Tesla's dream of the wireless transmission of commercial grade power.
And so
it's a great.
Yeah, for sure. It's really exciting.
I might add a little bit to that as well, that MAD's projects are not just on the supply side. So it's supply side, demand side, and storage. So depending on where on the grid you add your generation or you add your more efficient consumption or your more efficient generation and storage. So it all kind of works together. So I think what we look at is, here are the weak points, here are the challenges. And it informs our decisions on where we target some of these activities and what activities from a macro basis make the most sense. For example, a large scale data center, if we're pre-grid power, then we're not adding additional burden to that grid. Or if we've got some storage associated with production and we can level out the flows, well, that again is using those existing assets that are in place that have been paid for, which is always nice sometimes, and just getting some more life out of them, really.
It's a form of recycling.
Right,
it's like
in place.
Absolutely. That's why we all buy our clothes at Goodwill. So, I mean, it's the same thing, It's the same thing.
Exactly.
Absolutely. $1.95. Right?
Yes. I love a good thrift store.
All right.
Well, I have one more question for you gentlemen, and this is kind of more of a visionary question. And I know that we've touched a little bit on the grand vision of MAD, but as individual directors, how do you foresee the planet, I guess, looking and functioning as a whole? And how do you foresee living in a world, how we describe with all of our projects up and running, say in 10, 20 years?
Well, I'm gonna start with this.
I think you should.
So, I wake up at the house, which is totally off the grid, because I have a receiver, and I'm just receiving my wireless electricity there. And I've actually taken my house and put it where there are no roads, and I'm way up in the mountains, and I don't have to worry about heating because it's all wireless electricity, beamed in, and it's carbon-free produced electricity. So there's no roads, I mentioned. That's because we use autonomous quadricopters to get around.
So cool.
So I just take my cell phone out and I pull up my map program, which by the time we're done will not be a Google map program, guys. And
it's then, of course always fully charged.
Absolutely, fully charged, wirelessly charged, right? After my wireless coffee pot has gone off and I've had my morning brew, and I dial up my quadricopter, from Teeter quadricopters, and it comes teetering along over to my house in the middle of nowhere, and it lands, and it opens up, and I jump in, and then I put where I want to go, right? And then I fly there. And why can I do all that? I can do all that because we have advanced the electric motor so it is so much more efficient than it was before, right?
Mhm.
We have created wireless transmission of electricity with mobile receivers as well as stationary receivers. So that we're pulling electricity real time off of the electromagnetic grid that's running on the Zenith wave throughout the entire Earth. It's an amazing program, right? And then I can live out in the middle of nowhere because I don't need a road to get there because I'm going to go in my autonomous quadricopter because the Wi-Fi is going to be so much more advanced. And because through our golden cipher technology, I can safely and instantaneously, with no latency in the transmission of data, know that every quadricopter flying throughout there, pulling juice directly from the electromagnetic grid as they travel, is also pulling data and is also knowing exactly where it is with no latency whatsoever. That's where we're heading. That's where
love
we're gonna
that
be.
future, and I love that
Meet
vision.
George Jetson.
I was just gonna say, call him George Jetson, ladies and gents.
We're good. We're doing it, guys. That's really true.
Yeah.
And we can achieve that. We can absolutely make that happen. Now, I'm sure there's other things that I've forgotten about my morning in the future, but those are the cool ones that I thought I would, I thought I would talk
I
about.
like that.
I love that. Well, what is your vision? What do you see?
Well, I mean, it's going to be really hard to top George's vision there. That's for sure.
How do you beat the Jetsons?
And I would just like to say this is a family show, Walt.
Very good. Well, then I would say I would look forward to talking to Steve, who at that point should be visiting his first grandchild. So I think the way I think we obviously, there's no reason why Moore's law doesn't keep going. So I see the technology side of our lives. I could never imagine what we have today back when I was even young, which is, quite a while ago. But obviously, I think as we advance and we have holographics and, as you said, more electrification of the systems, we are really going to have an opportunity to take the clean air and the clean water that we've benefited from in the OECD countries for the last 20, 30 years and expand that outward. So a great example is a car from today. If you look at SOx and NOx and ground level ozone and lead, and you compare a 1970s vehicle to a vehicle of today, your pollutants are down 98%. And so I can see that vision of implementing MAD technology and other great inventors technologies around the world. And, you could go to Delhi and actually, walk in the streets and, Steve's white shirt to be the color of mine now, but then, hey, there's an opportunity to really make a difference globally. So one of the visions I see is seeing this technology as it's developed in the OECD sort of permeating out throughout the world and really improving lives just globally. And that, that 7 or 8 billion, it's likely 10 or 11 billion. And, extra 3 billion people makes a big difference on resources. So greater efficiency, greater production, and better stewardship is certainly the vision I'm hoping for.
Absolutely. Steve?
I like the aspect of decentralization, of individual freedom, and everything that we're doing is brings us closer to that. Whereas the governments of the world keep trying to consolidate and centralize everything, this is going to be taking us in the opposite direction, where we get to decentralize, we get more individual freedom of communications and movement. And I just feel that that's really where everybody wants to go.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm excited about
Everyone but John Kerry.
except John Kerry.
Yeah.
But I'm excited about I'm excited about taking us there.
Yeah, me too.
I love it. I love all those
good.
visions.
That's
all
a good
that
point, Steve.
Yeah.
Yep.
So to have all three of those visions coming together and creating this world, I'm excited. I'm excited to be living in it.
Mm.
This is way cool.
But are you excited enough to start making grandchildren? See, that's the real question. That's
All right. We'll think about it.
okay.
Yes, yes. I've got some I'll rent you.
There's a new
Okay,
business
well,
paradigm model, George.
Absolutely. I see the demand. I see the demand.
let's make sure we don't have any more questions to answer. And then, yeah, I think we're good. What a great Friday. I mean, it's always a great day with you, gentlemen.
Well,
But
it's
I
great
really
to be
enjoy
here.
sitting here, having some real talk with you guys, getting to know you more, letting our viewers get to know you more. You know, there's something to the transparency of all of this. It's really awesome.
Well, thank you, Fawn.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. We're
Thanks,
happy to be here.
Walt, great to see you, man.
Great to see you all.
All righty. Enjoy your Friday.
We'll see everybody later.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
We need some theme music.